So we all think we know the story of Noah's Ark, right? But what if I told you that beneath the surface of this famous tale lies a stunning piece of literary engineering? Today, we're looking past the animals and the rain to uncover a hidden architectural blueprint that gives this ancient story its incredible power.
All right, here's the game plan. We'll start by showing you the story's secret blueprint and its surprisingly exact timeline. Then we're going to pinpoint the one verse that changes everything, see how events on either side of it create a perfect mirror image, and finally, check out how this story connects with even older myths.
You know, when you think of Noah's Ark, you probably picture a pretty straightforward story. Good guy, big boat, a whole lot of animals, and an even bigger flood. But what if the way the story is told is just as important as what happens? What if it's not a straight line at all, but something far more elegant?
Let's just dive into this wild idea. What if this ancient narrative is built with the precision of an architect, creating a perfect, symmetrical literary arch?
Well, the key to all this is a literary tool called a chiasmus. The easiest way to think about it is like a narrative palindrome. You lay out ideas in one order, say A, B, C, and then you bring them back in reverse, C, B, A. It creates this perfect mirror, and its whole purpose is to force all of your attention onto that one crucial point right in the middle.
And this is where it gets crazy. The entire flood story in Genesis is structured as one massive chiasmus. I mean, look at this. Scholars have mapped it out. You've got Noah's sons at the very beginning and very end, like bookends. The command to enter the ark is perfectly balanced by the command to exit. It all builds up to and then falls away from that single pivot point, that X at the very center.
Okay, so if that literary structure isn't mind-bending enough, it's backed up by something just as precise, an incredibly detailed timeline. This is not some vague once-upon-a-time fairy tale. The author gives us a day-by-day map of the whole event.
I mean, the author is incredibly specific about the dates. The text says the flood began in the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month. From that very first day until the moment Noah can finally step on dry land again, the whole thing lasts for over a year.
Right, so let's get one thing straight. This isn't just a 40-day storm. That was only the first part, just the rain. The entire event, from the world going under to it coming back out, spans a total of 371 days.
And if you look at that full year, you can really split it into two big phases. You've got the first 150 days of destruction, where the waters just keep rising. And then you have the next 221 days, a much longer period of renewal, where the waters slowly pull back and the world gets a fresh start.
And that split, right there, that brings us to the absolute core of this whole thing. The exact center of the timeline and the dead center of that literary structure we were just talking about. The one moment that happens right at the end of those first 150 days of chaos.
This one line, this is it. And God remembered Noah. This is the pivot. It's not just a nice little detail. The entire story is deliberately built to hinge on this exact moment. And this is why that fancy structure, that chiasmus, is so brilliant. It highlights this single moment of divine remembrance. Everything before it is rising water, destruction, what some have called decreation. Everything after it is receding water, renewal, and salvation. Okay, so let's see how this mirror thing actually plays out in the text. I want to show you a couple of really cool, concrete examples from either side of that turning point.
So way back at the beginning, God tells Noah to come into the ark. Then on the other side of that central pivot point, the command is to go forth from the ark. In the original Hebrew, it's a direct opposition. It's a perfect, intentional reversal. Or how about this one? Before the rain starts, the text makes a point of saying that God himself shut him in, right? A divine act of protection. This is perfectly mirrored later when Noah, a human, opens the window, an act of his own, looking out in hope for a new world.
You know, even the words used to describe how the flood starts are incredibly deliberate. The text talks about the fountains of the great deep bursting open and the windows of heaven opening. This is seen by many as a direct reversal of the creation story, where God separated the waters above and below. The flood, in a way, is described as an act of decreation, pushing the world back to its original watery chaos.
All right, let's pull back for the big picture here. Because this carefully built story doesn't just exist on its own, it has echoes in other, even older myths, and it bumps up against some really interesting modern scientific debates. What's fascinating is that the Genesis story shares a lot of DNA with the much older Mesopotamian flood myth, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Both have a flood,
a hero who builds a boat, even birds being sent out to find land. But the differences are where it gets really interesting. Gilgamesh is about a bunch of bickering, impulsive gods. Genesis presents a single, purposeful God. The theology is just worlds apart, even when some of the plot points feel familiar.
And speaking of the real world, the story's ending runs into a really interesting modern debate. Genesis says the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. But the mountain we call Mount Ararat today is a specific type of volcano, a stratovolcano. Geologists argue that its layers show it was formed in the open air, not underwater, meaning it probably didn't even exist at the time of the flood. So that specific peak probably wasn't the landing spot.
So when you peel back the layers of what we thought was just a simple kid's story, you find this incredible piece of literary engineering. That symmetrical structure, the precise timeline, the mirrored events, they're not just for show. They're all designed to point you, the reader, to one single powerful moment. God remembered Noah. It really forces you to ask, how does knowing all of this hidden architecture, change what we think the story is actually about?